My girlfriend Hannah and I have been going out for 2 years now. We moved into a nice house that is on the edge of a town. We are still in the honeymoon phase of our relationship. She has a couple of weird rules that are a bit quirky, but it kinda makes me love her more. One of the rules that I think is the cutest is that we have to go to bed at the same time, so that one of us isn't waking up the other when they come in. Her rule that she is very strict about is that she won't allow any guests over when it is her time of the month. She says that she hates for people to see her like that. I agreed to this rule as I want her to feel safe in her own home. My best friend of 14 years, Tom, doesn't approve of our relationship and is always trying to convince me to break up with her. He keeps telling me that I need to be sleeping with random girls while I am still young. I keep telling him to drop it, but then he will mention it again a few weeks later. Hannah hasn't said anything bad about Tom, but I can see that what he says hurts her feelings. I was surprised to discover Tom standing outside our house yesterday evening. He was holding a case of beer and some snacks. He shoved his way past me and told me we were having a guys' night in. I told him that he had to leave as it was Hannah's time of the month. He just shrugged it off and said it would be fine. I told him he could stay as long as he didn't disturb her as she was relaxing downstairs. We ended up having a fun evening and watched a couple of movies we used to love as kids. I didn't think anything was amiss when Tom disappeared to use the bathroom. A few minutes later, I jumped out of my seat when I heard his screams of agony. I rushed downstairs to find his blood-soaked body lying on the ground. My girlfriend was sitting there chewing on his arm while the chains held her in place. I couldn't help but admire how beautiful her snout and fur looked in the moonlight. I gazed down at Tom's body and wished that he had listened to my advice and stayed away during her time of the month. The last thing you expect to find in the middle of the woods, far away from civilization, is a shop. But that is exactly what I found. It looked immaculate. A big sign above the door read, "Shop of Desires." Curiosity drove me to take a closer look, and upon peering through the window, I noticed an elderly man standing inside behind a cash register. He gestured with his hand for me to come inside, and I did just that. A tiny bell chimed above my head as I opened the door and entered the shop. My eyes lit up at the contents of the shop. Shelves all around me were filled with items of all kinds. The shopkeeper smiled as I made eye contact with him. "Welcome, valued customer. Strange place for a shop, isn't it?" I replied. Many questions were stirring in my mind. "Indeed, I hear that a lot. You will never see another shop like this one, my valued customer. Anything you desire, we have it in stock." "Anything?" I replied, doubtful of his statement. "I see that you need convincing. What is it you most desire?" The answer was easy. There was one item I desired, and I was convinced that he would not have it in stock. A first edition of Oliver Twist, signed by Charles Dickens. I replied, with a smug look upon my face. "Ah, yes. One moment, please, valued customer," the shopkeeper said, then went into the back room. The shopkeeper returned holding a book in his hand, and when he placed it on the counter in front of me, I could do nothing but stare in disbelief. "Is this what you desire?" the shopkeeper said as he opened the book, revealing Charles Dickens' signature. "Oh my God. How?" I replied, wide-eyed with shock. Like I said, my valued customer, if you desire it, we have it. That's got to be fake, right? I said, with clear doubt in my tone. It's as real as you or I, signed by Dickens' own hand. I examined it closely, and it did indeed look legit. How much? I asked. It will cost you an arm and a leg. Very funny. Really, how much is it? I would like to buy it, I replied. I wasn't joking. Your money is no good here, valued customer. The shopkeeper replied, producing a chainsaw from behind the counter. The old man's eyes stared unblinkingly at my own, and I found myself in a trance-like state. I grabbed the chainsaw and pulled on the cord, revving it up with a loud roar that permeated the entire shop. The tiny bell once again chimed above my head as I hopped out of the shop, with my first edition Oliver Twist, signed by Charles Dickens, nicely tucked underneath my only arm. Julia stood in the center of the garden, watching the crimson leaves of the sugar maple in the autumnal breeze. She recalled this day 18 years ago when she brought Daniel into the world. Her thoughts were interrupted by her husband asking her to come inside, and she was pulled back from the serenity of the moment. The cake is here, he shouted, but I can't find the candles. Julia nodded and nervously twirled her hair before forcing an air of bravery back onto herself. I'm coming, sweetie. The candles were in the cupboard that housed all her baking materials. Where else would they be? Her husband had interpreted her look and the angry manner in which she had opened the cupboard door. I am sorry, I should have known, he apologized meekly. Julia calmed herself. It wasn't his fault. He was just as worried as she was. She took his hand and held it before placing the candles in his palm. He smiled at her, but Julia turned away before his face fell into a contagious sorrow. Hey Mom, hey Dad, Daniel said, strolling into the kitchen. Cool cake, is everything okay? Course, her husband replied. You know your mother always gets a bit totes emotion on your birthday. Daniel groaned whenever his dad used patois he'd heard on social media. It made him smile as well, that dichotomy of the old using the language of the young. How do you like your present? Julia asked. Her son hugged her. Never too old for one of those, her husband commented. It's awesome sauce. I can't believe you got me one. In the living room, Julia could hear the digital orchestra of the console beckoning like a siren, calling him back to the game. She had hoped to have got him one earlier, but Amazon had lost the order. Just go and play, honey, Julia said, kissing Daniel on the top of his head. His hair smelled of apple shampoo. She caught her husband looking at his watch. He looked upset and walked away to compose himself. Please, don't let Daniel see you like this, she told him. Julia lit the candles on the cake and told Daniel to come and blow them out. Make a wish, darling. Julia then took her son's hand and led him to the garden. The scent of a caramel tree gracing the cool midday. Daniel's time was up. The treatment that had kept his condition at bay for 18 years would lose its effectiveness today. He didn't know. Julia held him tightly and cried, finally releasing years of despair and worry. Daniel hugged her back in bewilderment. Then, the delayed, unnatural growth of bone filled his body and pierced his organs. Daniel screamed in pain, begging his mom to help him. She gently stroked his hair until the last breath escaped his lips. Julia held on, entwined in her son's embrace. She did not let him die alone. That was her gift to him. Happy birthday, my beautiful boy.
Please subscribe, or the toxic skull will come for you.